In this video, we're going to go over what is called the slope-intercept form of a line. But first, we'll discover what that is. For each equation of the line below, graph it and then state the slope and y-intercept by looking at the graph. So I've given you two equations, y equals -1/2 x plus 3 and y equals 3x minus 5. So on graph paper, carefully graph these. You could do it by making a chart of ordered pairs, picking in convenient values for x, and then drawing the line. Once you draw the line, look at it and determine what the slope is by determining the rise over run and the y-intercept, which is an ordered pair where the x value is 0. All right, let's do the first one. Y equals -1/2 x plus 3. Now we want to pick convenient values of x. Notice that it's a fraction times x, so it makes sense that we would want to plug in multiples of 2. And 0 is always easy to plug in. So how about plugging in 0, -2, and +2 for x? So we've got -1/2 x times 0 plus 3, which means the y value will be 3. We've got -1/2 x times -2 plus 3. All right, so what will this be? The negatives cancel, and 1/2 of 2 is 1. So we have +1 plus 3 is 4. And let's see, when you plugged in +2, we have -1/2 times +2 plus 3. So this will be a -1 plus 3, which is +2. So let's plot these three ordered pairs. We've got 0, 3. We have -2, +4. So that would be up here. And we have 2, 2. And so it does look like we've got our 3 points on a straight line. So now we draw the line through those points. So here's the line. You might do a little checkpoint. It looks like it's going through this ordered pair 4, 1. And if you plug in 4 for x, you get -2 plus 3 is 1. So yes, this is also on the line. So it looks like we've got the right line. All right, now the question I asked you is what is the slope and what is the y-intercept? So for the slope, we start from one point and try to get to another point. So let's start right up here at 0, 3. And I would have to go to the right. So my run would be +2 to the right. And then I'd have to go down -1. So the slope of this line, remember, is rise over run. The run was 2, the rise was -1. So the slope was -1/2. Now, what about the y-intercept? The y-intercept means where does it cross? Where does the line cross the y-axis? And it's right here at this point right here is the y-intercept. And that is the point 0, 3. So the y-intercept is 0, 3. Well, look at the original equation, y equals -1/2 x plus 3, and note the slope, -1/2, was right here. It was the coefficient of x. And the y-intercept 0, 3, you know what? If you put in 0 for x, it should be clear to you that y is going to be 3. So the line crosses through at y equals 3. So that's why the y-intercept is going to be 0, 3. All right, let's do the second equation. Here's the second equation, y equals 3x minus 5. So I've gone ahead and made a little chart. If we pick any value of x and plug it in to solve for y, which is 3x minus 5. Since there's no fraction in front of x, I can go ahead and put in any integers. I don't have to worry about dealing with fractions. So I chose -1, 0, 1, and 2. You could have plugged any number you want in for x and solve for y. So let's see which one of these would be easy to graph on the graph I have here. Hopefully you've got real graph paper. -1, -8, that's pretty far down, and I didn't draw that far down, so I'm not going to plot that point. How about 0, -5? Well, here's 0, -5. And 1, -2, that'll be right here. And 2, 1, that'll be right here. All right, so I've got 3 points and it does look like they're lining up. So the next step would be to carefully draw the line through those 3 points. So you see the line I've drawn. Now let's look at it and decide what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept's easy. You just look at the y-axis and pick that point, which is right here, and that's 0, -5. So the y-intercept was 0, -5. Now let's do the slope. The slope we have to do rise over run. So let's say we started at the y-intercept. How am I going to get to another point on the graph? Well, I would go +1 in the in the run direction over 1. And then I'm going up how many spaces? 3. And so that reduces to 3. So the slope of this line is 3. So look at the original equation again, y equals 3x minus 5. Notice the slope again ended up being the coefficient of x. And in fact, that will always be true. Anything in this form, y equals something times x, plus or minus some number, the coefficient of x will be the slope. What about the y-intercept? This last number here, -5, that's where it crosses the y-axis, so the y-intercept is 0, -5. So this leads us to what is called the slope-intercept form of a line. The slope-intercept form of a line is y equals mx plus b. So notice it's an equation that's solved for y. It says y equals something, and we have an x term which has some number in front of it, plus some other number. So m and b are numbers. One or both could be 0, or neither could be 0. M is the slope. In other words, the coefficient of x is the slope when it's in this form. Also, the line passes through b on the y-axis. So whatever number is at the end plus that number, that's where the line crosses the y-axis, which means the y-intercept is 0b. So now, let's go ahead and identify m and b in some equations. So for these 3 equations of lines, I want you to identify m and b, write what m equals and what b equals. Put it on pause and try that. Oh, there. Okay, so for the first one, remember m is just the coefficient of x. So for number 1, that's m equals 2. For the second one, the slope is -1/3. And for the third one, the coefficient is 5/2. So that's the slope for each of those lines. Now let's identify b. Remember, b is where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, if I were going to write it as an ordered pair, you'd be writing the parentheses 0, b. All right, so for number 1, what's b? -9. For the second one, it's 2. And for the third one, you don't see anything. Well, remember, that means it's like a plus 0. So b is 0. Let's do one more. How about y equals -10? What would the slope and y-intercept be? The slope is the tricky part here. What's the coefficient of x? Well, you don't see x, do you? But you could deal with that. If you wanted to see x, you could write it as 0x minus 10. So if there is no x on the right-hand side, that means the slope is 0. And the y-intercept is -10. Let's see if you can figure out the slope and y-intercept for number 5 and 6 here. For number 5, what's the coefficient of x? You don't see it, but it's that invisible 1. So the slope is 1. It's not 0. When the x term isn't there at all, that's when the slope is 0. If you don't see the coefficient of x, it's 1. And then the y-intercept is 6. And for the last one, how about y equals -x? What is the coefficient of x? -1. And the y-intercept, you don't see it? That's 0, again, because you could think of it as plus 0. So here's the idea. If we can get equations of lines in this form, y equals mx plus b. If we could identify the slope and y-intercept, we now know a point on the line and the slope, and that will help us graph the line. And we'll do that in the next video.